and I was awakened to a mind that was just in like 5 alarm mode. It was spinning. The spin cycle was on high and it would not stop. My breath was shallow. My heart was pounding. But the thing that was primarily distressing in that experience was just the racing thoughts that would not stop. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. I am so glad to be here with you. Thank you for being here with me. Today's episode is hot off the emotional press because I literally just lived through it. I'm just coming out of this experience, and I'm here to share about it with you because this is something that, as creatives, as sensitive people, as entrepreneurs, as people who are passionate about what we do and who also experience stimuli and emotions in a big way, whatever parts of that you relate to, I know that this topic that I'm going to talk about today is something that's relevant to you. So basically, I'm going to share with you today a story of a nervous system crash that I recently experienced, like just days ago, literally. I'm going to share what led up to it and how I moved through it and how I've been able to recover from it and get back into the flow of my work, of my business, of my life. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I think that these nervous system crashes are something that we all experience. And I think we spend a lot of emotional energy trying to avoid them or beating ourselves up about it when it does happen. And really, one of the things I want to share with you today is that this is going to happen. I want to normalize it. This is human. This is the stuff, I talk about nervous system regulation all the time. This is the subject of my work. It's what I help clients with. That doesn't mean that I have a perfectly regulated nervous system all the time. And in fact, that idea of perfection and that high standard that we can find ourselves holding for ourselves of being perfectly regulated all the time, that actually leads to more stress. So I want to talk about how the energy that we expend trying to avoid a crash or being afraid of a crash or criticizing ourselves about a crash, how that energy can be better used helping ourselves move through those crashes when they come up. Sure, we want to do what we can to keep ourselves afloat. We don't want to head into these crashes unnecessarily. But when they do come up, we want to recognize that, this is something that happens and we can move through it. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. So let's get into that conversation. And I will just start us off by painting a picture for you of what I recently experienced. And then we'll go into how I moved through it and how you can move through this kind of thing too. So I'm going to start by setting the scene of what was going on leading up to this nervous system crash that I'm just coming out of. What was leading up to it? What led up to it? So I have just been in a period of feeling just really on fire in a great way about the work I do, about my business, about um, working with my one-on-one coaching clients. I love them. I love working with them. It really lights me up. I have felt very lit up with creativity and just burst. This is not uh, the feeling of every day or every season, but I happen to be in a season of feeling just like full of ideas, full of excitement, just wanting to write, wanting to record podcasts like this one, um, wanting to share. There's just like, yeah, a lot of generative energy inside my body that wants to come out. And there's like an exuberance to it. And I love it. It's like a totally awesome feeling when that is happening. Like I don't expect to feel like that all the time. Uh, that's not how I feel all the time, but I've been in and am in a season of that. And along with that exuberance, it can be kind of challenging to regulate during these periods of high levels of exuberance and excitement about my work, because that excitement, it's kind of addictive. It's not just kind of addictive, it's very addictive. I love that feeling. It's like it's a high. It's like a creative high. Um, and when I'm in it, it's like I just can't get enough of it. And I know because uh I am a practitioner who works through a nervous system lens. And you know, this is where my deep knowledge lies, is in working with the nervous system. So I know that that kind of energy is not sustainable without pacing and pausing to regulate and taking a break from creating all the time and from being, having my mind be engaged in my work all the time. I know that's not sustainable. And yet, hey, I'm a human being too. And sometimes I get really wrapped up in it. And it's hard to disengage. A while ago, I decided because I could feel, that this was building. I could feel like I'm like really wound into the energy of excitement and wanting to create all the time and just like bubbling with ideas all the time. And I can tell that I need to pace myself. And so I came up with this idea that I don't see clients on Fridays. That day is always reserved for having no clients on that day. But, I'm like doing a lot of other things on that day, like writing my newsletter or maybe recording a podcast or whatever, working on my book. And I decided Fridays, I'm going to take the entire afternoon off every Friday. so that I can pace myself, so that I can give my nervous system some time to modulate. I'm going to do things like I'll go to a museum, or I'll just like go to a coffee shop with a novel, or take long walks. I'll go see a friend. And then one day, or one Friday per month, I'll take the entire Friday off. So, I had the best of intentions, and I set that goal or that plan. Um, but I didn't quite follow through with it. I followed through with it a little bit, but it just like that addiction to the excitement and the energy and the buzziness, it kind of just took over. It took over. And so those Fridays started to melt away into, oh, but there's this person I really want to have on my podcast. I really want to have a conversation with them. I'll schedule, they're only available on Friday. I'll schedule a podcast interview that day. And, oh, but I just have, I'm bursting with ideas for Instagram posts to make. And it's just like really exciting me. And this is what's fun to me right now. So I'm going to spend the rest of my Friday afternoon creating. Um, and yeah, I just felt really pulled, and it was hard to disengage, and my excitement just was winning me over. And I could sense that things were building to a pitch that was going to tip my nervous system into overwhelm, but it just felt really hard to rein myself in. And maybe you can relate. Maybe this is something that you can relate to. I knew what I needed to do, but my energy just really wanted to keep going, going, going. And so last week, throughout the week, I had been getting little warning signs, just noticing that it was getting progressively more difficult for me to turn my brain off at the end of my workday, noticing that I was waking up and the first thing that I was thinking about was my business. Like every day in the morning. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing these little signs. And then last week, I started to get some louder signals from my nervous system, but really nothing that was so out of the ordinary for me. When my nervous system's overloaded and overwhelmed, it often speaks to me through head tension. Years ago, I experienced um, persistent and frequent and very intense migraine attacks. That was the thing that pulled me into learning about the nervous system, so that I could find my way out of that chronic migraine experience. And still to this day, when my nervous system feels overloaded, it tends to speak to me in what I now call head tension, because it's been several years since I've had what I used to experience as like a full-blown migraine attack. But yeah, my nervous system still will pull the head tension alarm to get my attention onto the fact that it's getting to be a little too much for my nervous system. So last week, I noticed that I was experiencing that head tension like every other day. It's not unusual for it to come up for me like once in a week, but it was every other day that week. And I was like, okay, I hear you, but it's very hard for me to disengage from this work obsession. Um, and I also started to experience that week a second body signal that I have experienced before and that I recognize as my nervous system telling me something, telling me that it's getting too overwhelmed. And this other symptom is this funny, odd, kind of hard to describe sensation in my mouth and on my tongue, where my tongue feels like it's just extremely parched, even when I am drinking water. So I could be guzzling water all day, but my tongue is still feeling this weird prickly feeling. And because I'm familiar with what this means, I notice that when my mind goes into like obsessing about work, that sensation is heightened and increases. And during the moments when I do manage to disengage from problem solving mode or, thinky mode, that sensation subtly decreases. So I know what's going on here when that sensation comes up. So these sensations were kind of building throughout the week, but you know what? It still wasn't strong enough to get me to like stop eating the mental candy of just obsessing over my work and the excitement that I feel about it. That just was pulling me so strongly. And if this is something you can relate to, what I want to say is like, this is so human. And it's so beautiful that we feel excited about something. Like, that is a beautiful thing. Yeah, it can lead us into overwhelm sometimes. And then we've got to deal with that. But that is what was happening for me. And it wasn't until the weekend that things really came to a head. And this was actually no surprise to me that it was the weekend, when all of my appointments for the week were done already, when all of my to-dos for the week were checked off already, when I had this open space of time of the weekend. And I had some fun activities planned with my husband and my stepdaughter. We went out to Rockaway to our place by the beach there, and we made plans to go see the musical Spam-A-Lot. There's this little community theater in Rockaway Beach, New York, and they put on these, it's a community theater, but they put on these really great productions. It's such a cute, sweet place. And we saw the musical Spam-A-Lot, which I had never seen before. And it's so funny and uplifting and just, really like a beautiful escape. So it was when my nervous system was actually given the space to unwind, but it was still in this cycle of like addiction to busyness and being on and like thinking and processing and, being just really busy with stuff. That is when things came to a head, when my nervous system had the space to unwind, but that felt really actually very uncomfortable to a nervous system that had become addicted to the rhythm or the vibration of busyness and chewing on things and creating. And when I say that things came to a head, here is what I am talking about. This is what happened. So it was Saturday, and I had woken up that morning with a bit of head tension. And it was just persistent and it wasn't going away. And I had it had come up a few times already during the prior week. Sometimes when I experience this head tension, if it persists and it doesn't like subside by mid-morning, I'll just take a painkiller, always pain. If I take a painkiller, it's something that is either prescribed or over the counter, and I'm following the safety advice. Um, and I never encourage clients to either take or not take a painkiller. I'm not a prescriber. I encourage you to follow safety guidelines, and within those guidelines to check in with your own inner guidance. But that Saturday morning, I really wanted to enjoy the musical. this head tension was not subsiding. So I took a painkiller. And usually when I do that, within an hour, the tension will subside. But on that day in particular, the tension did not subside, and it stayed with me throughout the day. Evening rolled around, and I was just feeling out of sorts, and I excused myself from watching television with my husband and stepdaughter, and I'm feeling really overstimulated right now. I need some time alone to unwind. I'm going to just get into bed and go to sleep early, which is exactly what I did, only to be woken up at 1:30 a.m. in the morning by my little rascal, Billy. She's one of our 3 cats, and she's the one whose job it is to wake me up in the morning for food. She usually wakes me up at about 5 in the morning for food, and so that's something I expect, and she does it. She's so cute that I can't get mad at her, but she does it in the most annoying way where she paws at my eye sockets and lightly uses her claws to wake me up. I mean, it's really it's a really annoying thing, but she's so freaking cute and I love her. And it is my job to feed her. But anyway, she usually does that at 5:30. That night, she woke me up for some ungodly reason at 1:30 a.m. And she woke me up right into, I think I was like mid low-key panic attack in my sleep when she woke me up. So, I don't know why this happened. Part of me thinks that she could sense my energy. She could sense that I was in like a low-key panic attack in my sleep and woke me up because of that, because she's so emotionally attuned to me. Um, Part of me wonders if maybe she does that to me every night, and I usually am a pretty heavy sleeper, but on that night I was not a heavy sleeper because my nervous system was so wound up and on overdrive. But whatever the case may be, I was awakened at 1:30 in the morning, and I was awakened to a mind, my own mind, that was just in like 5 alarm mode. It was spinning. The spin cycle was on high and it would not stop. And my breath was shallow. My heart was pounding. But primarily the thing, and the head tension was still present. So there was that discomfort. But the thing that was primarily distressing in that experience was just the racing thoughts that would not stop. Thoughts about work, my business, how my business is doing. So it was like thoughts about what do I need to do next in my business, but then also, thoughts about things I wanted to write or record or create. I mean, it didn't really matter what. It was just like my brain had gone into full blown fiend mode where it was like, if thinking about my business and what I'm creating, if that were let's just say chocolate bonbons, my brain had gone into the mode where it was like running around the house looking in corners to find more bonbons and just like shoving them in my mouth nonstop. And I was like totally out of control of my body. And like that's the analogy for what my mind was doing. It was highly unpleasant. It was beyond unpleasant. It was alarming. And it was something that I've experienced before, but I had not experienced in a while. Um, And it was reaching the level of distressing where I was partly considering waking my husband up. And part of what was going on in this like manic thought spiral was that my thoughts also started to catastrophize, to go into thoughts like, maybe I'm not going to be able to bring myself out of this on my own. Maybe I need to wake my husband up and have him take me to the emergency room, like get them to give me a Valium or whatever. But essentially, the headline was, maybe this is really an emergency. Maybe I'm really in danger. That's what my nervous system was blaring on the loudspeaker of my thoughts. So it was a little scary. Primarily it was uncomfortable because even while this was going on, there was a part of me online that was able to kind of coach myself through it, that was able to say to myself, this isn't fun. This is alarming. This is definitely a signal that your body is sending you that you need to take seriously, and you're going to be okay. You have experienced things like this before. You know exactly why it's happening. And we're going to be able to move through this. And that way of talking to myself or sort of coaching myself in that moment was the beginnings of how I came out of this nervous system crash. Not instantaneously, but that was the beginning of how I began to reverse the cycle and come out of it from that apex of the nervous system overwhelm. It started with that, while part of me was panicking, while that fearful part of my nervous system was panicking, that self-narrating voice was saying to me, okay, this experience is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. It is unusual, but it's not unheard of. You've experienced this before and you've come out of it before, and you're going to move through this as well. And what I did in that moment, it was the middle of the night, 1:30 a.m. So there wasn't going to be that much that I could do for myself. One of the things I did was I got out of bed, not because I thought like this would help me, but it did actually help me to get up and move my body around a little bit. But I got out of bed to feed my cat, Billy, who woke me up, because when she wakes me up, she is not going to relent until I give her a little snack. So I went downstairs to give her a snack. Moving my body, I recognized was helpful. I focused on my breath and on slowing down my breath. And that did not erase the panic thoughts or that racy feeling, but it did slow it down just a notch. And in that little bit of space, which slowing my breath down opened up for me, I actually had a moment of clarity in the midst of all of the racing thoughts, the racing heart, the panicky feelings. I did have this insight, this window opened up to me. And the clarity that came to me was, Like I knew that I had been kind of going, and in going mode too long without modulating things. I already knew that. But the clarity that hit me in that moment was why I had been going without taking a break. Part of it was the excitement that I was talking about earlier. You know, that feeling that feels good, feeling excited and creative and lit up about what I'm doing. But the clarity that came to me in that moment was that while the excitement had been a significant part of the driver for this rhythm that I'd gotten into, there was also a belief or like an unconscious belief that had been operating under the surface that was also driving fear. And it was the fear that was making it so difficult to disengage from the constant mode of being on. And the unconscious belief that had been bubbling sort of undetected until then by my awareness, the belief was that if I stop going, everything that I'm building here, all of the momentum that I'm building here, the momentum that I'm building in my business, the momentum that I'm building creatively, further developing my voice and on this podcast, writing this book that I'm working on that I've been wanting to write for years, and I'm now in the midst of writing it. The unconscious belief was that if I stop, if I pause, all of this momentum will disintegrate and all of what I have been building will collapse and disintegrate. And well, yeah, if that is the unconscious belief that's running in the background, of course, my nervous system is going to be pushing me to keep going, and don't stop. So it was really useful to recognize that fear-based and fear-fueling belief was present there under the surface because, for one thing, once that belief became known to me, that I'll call it a story, once that story revealed itself to me more clearly, of course, I was able to say, oh, hi, sweetie. Like, hello, fearful part of my nervous system. That is a really scary story you've been telling yourself. And guess what? That story is not true, but I can see where and why that story developed. I totally get it. I see that you have the best and the most sweet of intentions for me. You really want these things that I've been pouring my heart into to keep going and to keep blossoming and to keep expanding out into the world the way we are all designed to do, the way a flower blooms and expands into the world. I see that that is your beautiful intention for me, for our creativity, and this story that you have uh, developed, this story that everything's going to collapse if we don't keep going. It's actually not true, my dear. And in fact, it's kind of the opposite of that. That's true. If we don't pause to modulate and regulate, that's when we're going to hit a wall. And that's actually what's happening right now. But it's okay. It's okay. We can recalibrate, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But we're not going to do it all tonight because it's 1:30 in the morning. So we're just going to take a couple more deep breaths. We're going to get back into bed. We're going to bring our awareness to our body. We're going to place a hand on our heart. We're going to notice the sensation of the warmth of our hand making contact with our chest. We're going to bring our awareness to those sensations because that brings us back into the present. And thankfully, that did, by some magical grace of the universe, it did bring me back into sleep and into sleeping through the rest of that night. But the recovery story did not fully resolve there. It didn't end there. That was simply the beginning of the recovery. That meltdown moment that was the height of my nervous system overwhelm was also the beginning. It was the tipping point, the beginning of the recovery. And I will share with you how that recovery then unfolded. When I woke up on Sunday morning, like I said, this was like things didn't resolve all at once, all then and there. When I woke up Sunday morning, I was still experiencing that head tension, that like ongoing headache, low level, but noticeable headache was still with me when I woke up. And I was I was still experiencing those like weird, uncomfortable tingle feelings on my tongue. I was feeling just kind of like overall body stiffness and fatigue. But I knew what I needed to do. And while I had known what I needed to do for honestly like a few weeks leading up to that, I now felt compelled to do what I needed to do because that nervous system crash was, it was uncomfortable enough. It was alarming enough to get my attention. And I didn't want to be in that state anymore. I had reached that tipping point where I did not want to be in that state for one more moment of one more day. So I went into recuperating and recovery mode. And this is what I did. These steps are really pretty simple, but it took for me at that moment in time, it took having my nervous system pull the alarm bell to motivate me to take these steps. And again, I'm sharing this really to normalize this because this actually is step one was I did not tell myself I was failing. I could have, and fear wanted me to go into a shame spiral. I could have told myself all these stories like, you're a nervous system coach, you're a therapist, you help other people regulate their nervous system, like you're a fraud because this is happening to you. Like I could have gone into all of those self-shaming stories which would have had the effect of exacerbating the state that my nervous system was in and getting me deeper into the spiral. So I opted not to do that. I opted to tell myself a different story, which is a story that you can tell yourself too when you come up, when you experience something like this, your own version of this. I told myself, you know what? This happens. This happens because you're human. This is something talking to myself here, like this is something I am really great at helping other people through it, not because I never experience it, but because I do experience it. And, I'm my own laboratory. This is how I learn to move through these experiences. This is the knowledge base that I get to draw from to share with others, to share with you, dear listener, on this podcast, to share with the clients that I work with. So I started there. I normalized it. This is normal. This is human. And then I gave myself finally full permission to slow down, not just physically, but mentally. I knew that the top of the list thing I needed to do was to get out of mental overdrive. I needed to lovingly lead my mind out of working mode, out of problem solving mode, out of creating mode. I needed to somehow lead my mind into drifting and letting go mode so that I could recover. And one of the things that I did at the beginning of that day was I cleared my calendar of anything non essential. Anything that I had planned for myself in the coming days that did not absolutely need to get done, that didn't involve meeting with a client or, anything that was like something I had put on my calendar that didn't actually need to happen right away. I cleared it off my calendar to give myself a mental buffer zone, just to let my mind experience spaciousness in my days, in my con- in my conception of what I was heading into in the week, to offer myself some mental spaciousness. I also um, clearly articulated to the best of my ability in the state that I was in. I articulated to my husband and my stepdaughter what was going on with me. I let them know I was in a state of overwhelm and I was going to need to take some alone time for myself. So I just cleared the decks of any expectation that anyone might have of me or that I might perceive they had of me. Just cleared the decks of other people's expectations of me. Let them know I was going to take whatever time I needed to take by myself. And then I took myself on a long walk because that's something that for me is very regulating. I took myself on a long walk by myself. I took myself on a slow walk because my body was just not up to moving quickly at that time. And as I began my walk, I was doing my best to guide myself toward leading my attention toward my breath, toward looking at nature. We were out by the beach and I was taking a long walk on the boardwalk. I was attempting to guide my attention toward the waves of the ocean. But what I noticed pretty much right away is that my mind was just still heavily enmeshed in that like addiction to thinking mode. And it just wasn't going to loosen its grip at that moment. It was just like magnetized to thinking about creative work and my business. So I knew that I was going to like the expectation for my mind to just like let go of that at that moment on its own was too great of an expectation. And it was actually putting pressure on my nervous system. So I knew I was going to have to offer my mind an off ramp. I was going to have to offer my mind, like if I was going to take away the candy, I needed to substitute it with some carrot sticks. It needed something to chew on. It just needed something else to chew on that was going to then guide my mind into a flow state, into a letting go state. And what came to me in that moment was I'm going to listen to a book on tape. I'm not going to listen to a self-help book or a book about marketing or a book about nervous system stuff or like anything that has anything to do with what I do for work. I am going to listen to a novel. And the novel that I chose was Crazy Rich Asians partly because it just happened to already be on my Audible app. I don't even remember downloading that book, but there it was on there. And I was like, oh, I really love that movie. I've seen it a few times already. So I already know the story. So it's going to be really easy for me to listen to this audiobook because I won't have to pay attention too much to figure out what's going on. Like I already know and love these characters, already know and love this story, have found it delightful every time that I've watched the movie. So it's like familiar but fun. And I just put that audiobook on, and sure enough, before I knew it, my mind was occupied not with thinking, doing, or creating, but just with following along with the story. And that's exactly what I needed. One of the other things I did while on that walk was I let go of the timeline. I could tell that I just knew that this was what I needed to do. I knew it was helping. And the head tension was still with me and it was still fluctuating. It was still, it would subside and then it would intensify again. It was still persisting. That weird prickly feeling on my tongue was still persisting. But what was changing is that my mind was starting to let go. It was starting to loosen its grip on the busyness mode, on the problem solving, on the attachment to thinking about my creative work and my business. So I knew that this was going in the right direction. And I knew that one of the things that was going to help it to go in that direction, in the right direction, was to let go of the timeline, was to tell myself that it might take a while. I don't know how long it's going to take for the head tension to subside or the prickly feeling on my tongue to subside, but I know that it is going to subside. I know I'm doing the right things. I know that this is what I need right now. And I'm just going to trust the process and let go of the timeline. Another thing that I just naturally started doing as my mind continued to loosen its grip on thinking about work and started to just like embrace this new, healthier for that moment in time anyway, candy that I was giving it of the novel, The Book on Tape. I just started to notice all of these upsides about what was happening. You know, like the fearful part of my mind would love to catastrophize about what I was experiencing. But as my mind started to loosen its grip on busy mode and get into the flow of this book on tape, um, thoughts from like the grounded part of me started to emerge and started to just like present to me like, oh my gosh, there's so many upsides to what I'm experiencing right now. Like I went into a, fairly serious nervous system crash last night. And here I am, like taking a walk and not panicking about it. That is so freaking cool. I wouldn't have known how to do that several years ago before I learned about my nervous system, before I learned all this stuff about how the nervous system works. Like, how cool is that, that I'm able to walk myself through this? Like, isn't this beautiful? I am not mentally punishing myself. I'm not shaming myself. I'm just, you know, calmly walking myself through this. Like what a win. What a beautiful thing. What an upside. Um I even thought to myself, this is something I can share with my podcast listeners about. Like this is something that we all experience each in our different ways. And isn't it wonderful that we can connect with each other? We can normalize these experiences with each other. And and I was like, and it's a beautiful day, and I'm walking outside, and I'm still able to move my body even though I feel this stiffness, and just, like, all of these upsides were surfacing, to my mind, and I was articulating them to myself. Some other things that I did later on in the day was I reached out to a friend who also is in the nervous system practitioner realm, someone who I feel just I can share with really openly, who totally gets it and, also reflects back to me, normalizes it, reminds me that I'm not alone in these kind of experiences, and she knows I'm gonna move through it. She empathizes, and that was just really nourishing. It's so beautiful to remember that I'm not alone and that there are other people out there who get it and who get me. And finally, I trusted my intuition on what I needed. I if you are a listener of this podcast, you'll know that I love journaling and often use it as a tool to help me work through things. But in this particular situation, I just knew instinctively that journaling was actually not what I needed at that moment. I needed to not do anything that felt like doing or searching or delving in. I needed the opposite of that at that moment. I needed more walks listening to the audiobook of Crazy Rich Asians. I needed to let go of the timeline and I needed to just let time pass. So I trusted that. I trusted that inner knowing. And that is exactly what unfolded. And it took a couple of days. It took a little while, but you know what? It didn't take forever. It was about midday on Monday that I noticed, huh, isn't that interesting? The headache that had been with me for the last 4 days just lifted. Not dramatically, not all at once. It was just sort of a recognition of, "Oh, that part lifted." The tongue tingles are still kind of present, but the head tension lifted. My body's still a little bit stiff and tired, but things are lifting. Um, and then they just continued to gently, bit by bit, lift. And today is Tuesday, and I'm recording this podcast feeling very much back to myself again and knowing that I need to take it gentle for the rest of this week. Recording this podcast is the only thing that I'm doing today. I happened to not have any appointments on my calendar today. I'm going to continue to take it easy. I felt like I was wanting to engage in this one act of creativity because I don't need to shut it all down. I don't need to shut it all down. I just need to guide myself gently to bring myself back to gentleness. And I'm going to go take another walk after recording this and listen to Crazy Rich Asians, which I am loving. Highly recommend. So, what did I learn from all this? What are my takeaways from this one wave in, the ongoing waves of experience of life and of being a creative, being someone who's in business for myself, being someone who is very passionate about what I do and who has, who's a sensitive person. One of my takeaways is that crashes are going to happen sometimes, and it's not the end of the world. It's okay. Yeah, it's not what we're aiming for. Just like we're not aiming to have conflict with our partner if you're in a relationship with a life partner. Having conflict is never the aim or goal, but we know it's going to happen. And over time, we learn how to work with it so that it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean we have to shut everything down, but we do need to slow down and bring some intention and gentleness and loving guidance to ourselves so that we can move through it. So yeah, takeaway one is that nervous system crashes are going to happen sometimes, and it's not the end of the world. It's something that we can move through. We don't have to expend all of our energy worrying about a nervous system crash or trying to avoid it. That kind of energy can actually lead us into a crash. But we can trust ourselves. We can trust ourselves. We can trust our resilience, that we are able to move through those crashes. And that when we approach those crashes with gentleness toward ourselves, when we normalize it, when we do the opposite of shaming ourselves, we can actually move through them more gently. And that period of time that our nervous system needs to unwind can actually become a bit shorter when we are gentle with ourselves and when we normalize it. Other takeaways are that fear loves to tell us that we need to keep going, 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 or we're never going to get to where we want to go. But the wise part of ourselves knows that our best work and our greatest creativity comes from a regulated place. And again, it's okay. Sometimes we get overexcited and our nervous system is sometimes operating from a place of fear, and that's okay. We can recover, we can regroup, and we can move through it. And we're not alone. You don't have to move through it alone. You can reach out and connect with someone. So those are my takeaways, and that each version of this kind of experience that we move through brings us greater knowledge that we can take forward with us through the next wave that we encounter, and that we can also share with others too. This is deep wisdom that we get to share with others through our work and through our conversations. So, if you, dear listener, are listening to this story that I just told and you are seeing yourself in this experience of nervous system crash, if you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, that is totally me. I get overly excited about something. I go into overdrive and then I hit a wall and I crash. These are the takeaways that I hope you will take with you from my experience. Be kind to yourself. You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You are perfectly human. You are in very good company. And you can trust your inner guidance. You can trust the process. You can move through these experiences. And you don't have to do it alone. This is exactly the kind of thing that I love to walk my clients through. I love to hold my client's hand through these kind of experiences, not because I am above them myself, but because I know exactly what you're going through. Okay, I might not know exactly what you're going through. You are unique. I am unique. We each experience this type of thing in our own unique way, in our own unique life circumstances. And at the same time, there are patterns to these experiences that are deeply universal, that are deeply human, that are a shared experience. And I am right there with you in the experience of being human, of caring deeply, deeply about the work that I do, of having this, scared part of the nervous system that can send us into overdrive. So I get it. And I just love walking side by side with my clients through these experiences and back out the other side because I'm also passionate about what you do. I am passionate about your dreams, your creative projects, your businesses, your, whatever it is that you are passionate about. It doesn't have to all get shut down because of nervous system overwhelm. This is something we can work through. And it seriously breaks my heart when I hear people saying, I was doing this thing that I love. I had this business, I had this passion, I had this creative pursuit that I loved so much, but I shut it all down because my nervous system was just getting too overwhelmed. That breaks my heart. It's a very common thing. And it doesn't have to be the case. We don't have to shut everything down. We can move through these experiences. You can move through these experiences. And if you would like my support in moving through these kind of experiences with nervous system overwhelm so that you can continue with your passion, with your business, with your writing, with your creativity, I would love to support you through that. That just lights me up. And if you want to explore working together, please get in touch. There are several ways you can get in touch with me. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm there at Anna_Holtzman. Send me a message. I would love to chat with you and learn more about what it is that you're working on. You can email me, Anna@AnnaHoltzman.com. And you can find me through my website, AnnaHoltzman.com, and you can apply there to work together. You can fill out an application form, which will help me get a better sense of what it is that you are working on, what you're wanting support with, and then I can get a sense of whether or not we might be a good fit, and we can explore it further from there. So, whatever it is that you are experiencing today, wherever your nervous system is at today, whatever this episode brought up for you, I'm sending you so much love, so much empathy, so much encouragement and companionship. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Take good care and trust yourself. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.